How's everybody doing today? It's been an eventful week here on the old Daniel Batal channel. It's good to see so many of your familiar faces there in the chat. Today, I wanted to take a minute, more than a minute, many minutes, to talk about some options here. I think a lot of you people who are here today and might be watching in the replay know what happened with Filmora. A lot of you are Filmora users. Suddenly our lifetime licenses no longer apply to the new update. Doesn't mean we can't use the existing Filmora 11. But it was a weird punch in the face that a lot of us just kind of took like, wait, what? So what we're thinking here is a good friend of mine, Jay Lippman, who's been on the channel before, who is also a Filmora license holder. I think he's a lifetime license. But also his main editing software is DaVinci Resolve. And I've said all along, I think DaVinci Resolve is one of the best options out there, especially considering they have a free version that you can start using right now. But it's a very professional level software. And for someone who has been using something like Filmora and wants to switch, it can be very confusing. Like, I don't even know where to start. So I said, you know what? Let's bring on someone who actually knows where to start, and he can actually get us through understanding how to start using the software and hopefully, give you guys some ideas, a feel of what it is if you want to try it yourself, because you can start using it for free. So ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome to the Daniel Batal Show, my good friend, Mr. Jay Lippman. There he is,
hello.
Jay. Good to see you, pal.
What's up?
All right. Look at that.
Oh,
man, yeah. I got some booze and some hisses in there.
Like
how you doing, pal?
Again. I'm good, man. I'm good.
It's been a while since we've done something like this, huh?
It has. It has. I'm excited to be. I've been sitting here, kind of just wrapping up the year, and I missed being on camera. So this is nice. It's been a long time since we did it. Quick shout out to Magic Flying Potato for the $10 super chat. Merry Christmas, Daniel and Megan. Hey. And you too, Jay. I'll share that with you. Coffee's for everyone, courtesy of Magic Flying Potato. Right.
Thank you, pal. Much appreciated. We're excited for this too, Kathy. It's one of those things I think, I'm not going to get off on a tangent about Filmora. A lot of us had a really great experience with the software for a lot of years, and a lot of us are feeling that maybe it might be time to try something else. Maybe some people are still using Filmora. If you do and you love it, stay with it. But if you're thinking about moving in a different direction, I think that there are other softwares out there that have a lot more capabilities. DaVinci Resolve being one of them. It was funny, Jay, I was on their website and I was just looking at all the movie accreditations they have right on the main page. People who have been using DaVinci to do some of their production, and I'm just like, Thor, Love and Thunder, whatever that one was. It's like all of the Black Widow movie, like all these blockbuster movies. And I'm like, wow, they all integrate using DaVinci Resolve. That's the level of software that we're talking about today.
Yeah, it's awesome. Now, all those movie credits, at least most, if not all, are specifically color grading. DaVinci Resolve, when it first was released, it was just a color grading tool. That's all it was. It cost a ridiculous amount of money. It was like tens of thousands of dollars back then. And over the years, ever since DaVinci, I think 12, they started integrating some editing features, and they just kept building on it, and now it is quite literally an all-in-one editing suite. You can do anything that you need to do with just, a little bit of creativity and some time to learn the software. You can. I would imagine that given time, those editing tools are going to start taking place in Hollywood movies as well, not just the color grading. But as it stands, it is the industry standard for color grading.
So do me a favor, Jay, as always, when we go live and we actually hear how YouTube filters our stream, your volume's a little bit low now, so can you mind popping that up just a little bit more so we can make sure that people can hear everything you have to say?
How do we sound now?
Wow, that sounds wonderful. You sound more manly, not only louder. Is it too loud? Is it too much? Is that good? Right? How do you sound, Megan? Sound good? Tell us how we sound along the way here, folks. All right, so right off the bat, listen, what I'd like to do is allow you to share your screen, show people what this looks like when they open up DaVinci Resolve, and let's kind of walk through some of these things so that later on, I will make sure that I chapter this so that if you want to come back later on, anyone watching here or in the replay, can find the different portions of how to bring in footage, how to cut footage, how to learn how to do some transitions. And you'll be able to come back and use this as hopefully a reference to open up the software yourself and sort of say, okay, I'm going to try this. Jay's going to lead me through it. So Jay, let me do this. Let me pull that right up here to begin with.
There we go.
Can you just kind of open up things and show people what to expect? I'll get our faces out of here so they can get the maximum experience.
Yeah, sure. So we've got, the dual monitor when you're sharing a screen is weird. Here we go. All right. So let's open up DaVinci Resolve. Now it installs just like any software would install. It's going to do all of the stuff automatically and you don't have to worry about anything. So that's pretty self-explanatory. When you first open up DaVinci Resolve, you're going to be taken to what's called the project library or the project manager. And this is where you have a list of all of your open projects here. And this is where you can also start a new project. So I actually have a project that I need to edit. I just did a little studio tour for my vlog channel. So we're going to use that as the example footage for today. So you can also, let me just go back real quick. This is the main screen. You can also create folders. So if I zoom in here, you can see I've got some folders here. So you can split it up. So I've got my YouTube videos, podcasts, I'm in the middle of creating some visual effects products that I'm going to be selling on my website, some Fusion training stuff. You can create different subfolders. And if I click into YouTube, you can see we've got all of my open YouTube videos right here. So what we're going to do.
All right, hold on.
Yeah.
Let me start here. I'm getting, apparently we're a hair loud now. So
we're a hair loud. Okay.
Getting a little bit of gain on your mic. So just slightly back it off. We want to make sure that this is the right experience for everybody. If I'm in it, it's going to ruin it, but we're going to have to deal with that. So let me start here. I want to start really simple.
Yes.
If you were just now someone who doesn't have anything listed in here yet, they just got the software. All right. They just got the software and they just open it up. They wouldn't have this. What would they be looking at in terms of what would be the blank start from a clean slate with nothing? What does that look like? How do we open a project that has nothing in it? I'm just opening the software.
Yep. That's what we're about to do. So let's pretend all of this is blank. What we're going to do is come down here to new project. We're going to click on that. And we can give the new project a name. So we're just going to call this Studio Tour and hit create. And I think oh, look at that. There's an update available. That's another cool thing about DaVinci Resolve is when you open it up, it will automatically tell you if updates are available. I'm going to skip this one. I'll update it later.
Listen, don't mention updates. There's a lot of sensitivity in the room right now.
Don't worry, they're free. I promise.
So now we're looking at a basic layout, right? Now let me say this is what we're expecting. This is what's going to open up. Yes. We're going to take a look at this thing and say, okay, explain what we're staring at right here with this default open screen.
Yes. This is the cut page in DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve is split into 7 pages. So if we come down to the bottom of our screen, we'll see, let's not do that. Media, cut, edit, fusion, and I screwed up on my zoom in, but we've also got Fairlight and Deliver. We're going to go through these one by one. I'm going to explain what each one of them does. But at least with mine, whenever I open it up, it defaults to the cut page. So this is what you should see in a brand new project with nothing in it when you first open it up.
And I will say I went ahead and installed the free version this morning, and that's exactly what I saw too. I had it on a different computer, and I've used it before a bit, but I wanted to see right from the beginning set up. I put the free version in, and then it led me through a quick check. It checked to see if my system requirements would kind of run the software, do those things. It made sure all of the proper... it actually started looking for things like VST plugins, so it did a little bit of a warm-up to sort of go, okay, just taking a look at your computer, making sure we can do this, and that was kind of fun. Yeah. let me see. Quick question here we had. Daniel, I keep getting a pop-up here to buy the full version, and that is $300. I think there's probably prompts. I didn't see a pop-up personally. They might have one in the free version. You do not, let's quickly explain. There are two different versions of DaVinci Resolve. There is a free version that has some restrictions and limitations that is completely free to use right now, correct, Jay?
That is correct. So there's a free version and then there's a paid version. The paid version is called DaVinci Resolve Studio. Now, all of the basic tools that you will ever need to create a video are available in the free version of DaVinci Resolve. So if you're not doing anything too fancy, you can do whatever you know. I worked off the free version of DaVinci Resolve for a long time. I actually edited an episode of a TV show in the free version of DaVinci Resolve.
And there's no like watermarks or any of those things that like, well, is it really free? What's the catch? Can I actually make something, but it's going to say Resolve when I export it across the screen?
No, the first year of me doing DaVinci Resolve tutorials, they were all done in the free version. There's no watermark. There's nothing. There's just limitations. There are things that you don't have access to. There are certain, I don't know the full list, but there are certain built-in effects that you can't use in the free version. One of those is their noise reduction in the color page. You can't use that. Anything that is powered by DaVinci Resolve's AI is reserved for the paid version. And the big thing, and this is the reason why I would kind of push towards Studio, if you're working with a dedicated GPU, when you get the Studio version, you unlock things like GPU accelerated effects and GPU accelerated exporting, which seriously cuts down on export time.
Gotcha.
Basically, if you want to take full advantage of your GPU, I would definitely suggest upgrading, but that's a one-time payment of $295. And then you never have to pay anything again.
Well, the caveat. I made sure that I checked the end user agreement, and they are very clear in the current end user license agreements, just like they do in every other software now. They do reserve the right to change that down the line. They've been clear about that since people are purchasing, not unlike some other companies we may have been dealing with. Yeah. But for now, you bought the license? Have you ever had to buy another license in any of the updates, upgrades, we're going to call them, to date?
No, I have not. I was just trying to think, but no, you never have to pay. I haven't had to pay to update or upgrade to the latest version or anything like that. When you purchase a Studio license, you get a license key that's good for 2 machines. So I have it on my desktop and I have it on my laptop. They also just released an iPad version.
I heard that.
It just came out. I was a tester on the beta, and it just came out publicly for 2 days ago, I think. And they have, again, a free version and a paid version. The paid version is a one-time fee of $95. And that just gives you this page that we're looking at now, the cut page, and also the color page. I'm hoping that they introduce Fairlight, which is the audio page. But right now you get cut and you get color. And I've tested it out, and it's great for simple videos and even better for if you're on set and you want to, or you're traveling and you want to begin and edit. And
it feels the same. The layout, it's not like a separate, like a lot of the people who may have used something like Filmora, had the desktop only version. They did have like a Filmora Go that was an app, but it was nothing like Filmora.
That. Yeah. No, this is like you go in there and it's DaVinci Resolve. Like there's a couple things that are in different spots just to optimize it for the size of the screen that it's on. But other than that, like it's DaVinci Resolve. It's got the cut page and the color page, and everything that is available in the cut and color page on the full version is available in the iPad version.
Right. So it's like one of the things Amy Johnson-Crowe said, so it's kind of like how Photoshop Elements is more of a stripped-down version of Photoshop. Not too dissimilar. There's limits. I wouldn't say, but this actually, I think one of the differences is this really doesn't, once you learn to use this, it's not like you upgrade to the pro version, the studio version, and it completely changes the layout. It's just a lot of things. It'll still feel the same. You'll still feel like you've learned the software. It's just suddenly some of the other features, advanced features, are now accessible to you. Is that a fair statement or not?
That's exactly right. And you can still test out some of the studio. Actually, you could test out basically all of the studio effects in the free version. You just, at that point, they put a watermark on the video and say you can't export it with this effect on it. But you can test it out and be like, wow, that's really cool. And testing some of that stuff out is honestly why I decided to eventually upgrade to studio.
Okay, so that's the only situation by which you get a watermark, is if you tried accessing some of the studio level, the pro paid level features, and you left them in your edit. But everything but it'll prompt you to go, hey, you're using that. If you want to use that, you need to pay, and you can remove that and say like, okay, I'm not going to use that effect. And that would allow you to go right back to exporting with the free version. Is that without any watermark?
That is exactly right, yes.
Okay, let me see. Couple questions here. Let me get this one. Question, what's the advantage of using this on my iMac over iMovie for creating my YouTube videos? You want to handle that, Jay?
Yeah, sure. So to be honest, and this is going to sound really weird, but to be honest, there may not be an advantage. It all really depends on the types of videos that you want to make. I'm a big believer in there is no best. There is only best for me. And so if you want to get some more, iMovie is a very simple editor and it's really good for making simple videos. But if you want to get more involved and you want to make more creative and complicated edits, if you want to start adding some effects, and not just adding effects, but building your own effects, if you want to really dive into audio and make sure that your video is sounding like good, then something like DaVinci Resolve is going to be better than iMovie. It really all depends on your goals and what you want. DaVinci Resolve, there is a steeper learning curve, a much steeper learning curve than iMovie, but what you are trading off, or what you're gaining in exchange for that learning curve, are the tools and the flexibility to literally make anything that you want to make.
And here's another, that's awesome. Thanks for explaining that, Jay. When I was looking at the licenses today, the free versus the studio paid version, question the platypus. Love that channel name.
That's such a great
said
name.
Something that I think is absolutely correct. I think I saw that that was one of the things they said. The free rate version, you can run up to 4K, and I believe 60 frames per second is the ceiling of aspect ratio and frame rate. So
yes.
I think I think I'm quoting that correctly. And then the studio version goes nuts. It's up to like a ridiculous, kind of. I don't build that big. I don't ever go any bigger than 4K. You'll never see it.
I don't either. And very few, like a couple of people just to put out a video about it have been, because you can upload, I think, up to 8K on YouTube. And people have done that just to be like, hey, this is what an 8K video looks like on YouTube. I think MKBHD did it once, but really, like, most people are not going to go above 4K. And by the way, that is export. That is the export limitations. If you have 6K footage that you want to edit in DaVinci Resolve in the free version, you just won't be able to export that any larger than 4K.
Is that the same thing that's true with frame rate? Let's say I took a 120 FPS piece of footage that I was trying to do super slow-mo. And then I slowed it down and it was only going out at 60 frames when I was done. I can still do all that stuff inside of the free version?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as footage that you bring in, there really is no limitation. They both support RAW video, awesome. which is great. So if you're shooting Blackmagic RAW like I do on my main camera, then you can bring that in, and then you really get some cool stuff that you can play around with. But there are no limitations to the footage that you can bring into DaVinci Resolve. All those limitations are on the export side.
Fantastic. Quick thanks to Codiations for the super chat. Well, good sir. Merry Christmas. Glad you were able to make it. I'm glad you were able to make it here too as well, my friend. Thank you for the super chat. So let's try to move right through this. I want to make sure people can get as much value as possible. So here's the window that they would be looking at when they opened the software. We're in what they call the cut page. Now let's say, okay, first step, what everyone thinks about is, I want to bring in a piece of footage that I filmed. How do we go about doing that?
Well, I would actually back up
Okay.
one step. There's
Don't let
one
me push
step
it.
before that.
Don't let me run this conversation.
Yeah, I would back
I'm a
the
Phil
first
Moore user.
right. The first
I
thing
know?
the first thing that you're gonna do is make sure that your project settings are set.
Oh
up
yeah, let's do
correctly.
that. Project
So
settings.
let's
Show us
do
how we do that.
So there are a couple different ways you can get to project settings. You can come up here to File and go to, where is it? Project Settings. There you go. So there's your project settings. We'll come back to those in a second. The other way, and the way that I usually do it, is to come down here to this little gear icon, and that will also open up your project settings. Now, there's a lot to go through here. I'm going to kind of go over what I typically set up here, but you've got your timeline resolution. So this is a Ultra HD, or what most people refer to as 4K. So 3840 by 2160. If you hit this drop-down box, I mean, you got a ton of different presets, all different kinds of aspect ratios, and just so many things.
So is that also where, like, can we pull up, like, if someone was doing a short, can you go to a 9:16?
Yeah. So here's a really cool thing. They actually just added this in DaVinci Resolve 18. So let's go ahead. Let's say we're going to do a short. We'll do, where is 1920 by 1080? Okay. So here we go. We got this little checkbox here. Use vertical resolution. It'll automatically swap it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. The brand new in DaVinci Resolve
You
18.
you just set the aspect ratio and it swaps it by itself. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really cool. So there we go. We're gonna go back to 4K because I just have to do 4K. There we go.
Show off.
Can't upload 1080p. You can pixel aspect ratio. Don't even worry about that. It's square by default. Just keep it on square. You can set your timeline frame rate. Again, tons of different options, all the way from 16 up to 120. I typically stick with 24. Playback frame rate, just keep it the same as your timeline. It's just, why would you have a timeline frame rate different than your playback frame rate? Video monitoring. So this is what's going to set, these are your settings for your actual playback monitor within DaVinci Resolve, where you watch the video that you're creating.
Hey Jay, do you have did you say you have a zoom key to go in a little closer?
I do, and I keep forgetting to use it. So here we go.
Do that. Chat is asking. We're trying to be responsive to the chat, just so they can see a little bit better.
Here we go. Video. So video monitoring. These are the settings for the actual screen that you're watching the video that you're creating, and I typically keep mine at 1080p 24 frames per second, just so I have a little bit smoother playback. Although I just swapped out my GPU, so I could probably go up to 4K, but you just have a bunch of different options here as well. Just keep the frame rate the same as your timeline and your playback frame rate, and then you can do whatever resolution you want. Lower the resolution, the smoother playback you're going to get, typically, unless you have a super optimized computer. And that's pretty much all you have to change in this page right here.
That's your basic project settings that most people are used to. They know they're going to set the aspect ratio, the frame rate, bit rate, things like that. So that's right here. You can do that either upper left or lower right corner with the gear icon. This is the first step. Get it set. Figure out what the project's going to be, what aspect ratio, what resolution, and then you just click okay, save, go.
Yeah, once you've got it all set, you've gone through all these menus and set up everything, then you click save. One pro tip I'll give real quick: the Fairlight menu here. This is your basic audio settings. YouTube by default is looking for around -14 LUFS. That's how loud they want your video to be. If it's louder than that, they're going to compress it. And if it's quieter than that, it's going to stay quieter than that. But then all the videos, before and after they watch your video are going to be louder. So target loudness level, I would put it -14 LUFS. That way, when we get to audio mixing, you can make sure that you're normalizing to the correct level and your video will be loud enough for YouTube. So
Yeah, we
there's that.
apologize that this is still a little tough to read on the screen. It's just
I can zoom in more.
we're not seeing the zoom right now. So the zoom's not
Oh, you're
coming
not?
through on the screen share.
Oh,
So,
no.
Yeah, so it's just one of those things. That's all right. That's
Oh.
fine. So listen, but the idea here is we really want to build this in a way that when you open up the software, you can kind of follow along and you will see these things on your monitor and you could sit there and go, okay, he tells me to look at the screen. So we apologize. With some of these advanced softwares, there's more features. There's more buttons. That means the text is going to be a little smaller. Quick
Yes.
question while we're there. Is there a way to increase the display of the software itself?
Not within the software. You'd have to go into your display settings.
Right, okay.
Yeah. But in the software itself, as far as I know, there is not a way to do that.
Okay. Let me stop interrupting here.
That's okay. So yeah, you go through, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Color management, that is stuff that's just leave that alone until you're ready to like really dive into color grading. But yeah, you got color management, general options, all sorts of stuff here. One thing that I do want to talk about is proxies real quick. Sometimes, especially if you're working on a lower powered computer, you bring in footage, it doesn't play back right, and then you have to generate proxies. You can set your proxies in here in these master settings. If you come down to optimized media and render cache, you can set what kind of file you're going to have, as a proxy. ProRes will be an option if you are on a Mac. The closest equivalent to that on Windows is DNHR or DNHR. So you can set all your proxies in here. And then once we actually bring some footage in, I'll show you how to create the optimized media, and it should work a lot better.
And I think that's one of those things that, who's coming from something like Filmora, where it just said, like, turn proxies on, turn proxies off. More in-depth level of talking about the type of proxies that you can build, the type of files type that
Yes.
you're using. So just more of the same thing. Anyone who doesn't know what proxies are, is it just takes the footage that you're using in your project, and it sort of makes a copy of it, but at a much lower... a lot less information, let's put it that way, in it. So it's not forcing would you say it's a compression ratio? How would you better explain a proxy?
It is.
The way that
It's
they do it?
what it is. Playback has a lot less. It has a little bit to do with resolution, but it is mostly the compression on the file that determines how well a video is going to play back. The more compressed a file is, the more power is going to be required by your computer to uncompress it and get it ready to be edited. So most consumer level cameras film in a delivery format, which is H.264, H.265. There's a considerable amount of compression on those files. An editing-friendly format is something like ProRes or DNHR, which has a lot less compression. So you can actually, theoretically, depending on your computer, I could play back a 4K DNHR smoother than I could play back a 1080p H.265 file, if that makes
Crazy.
sense. Yeah, it is. It really, compression is like the big enemy of playback.
It's like your software is always trying to interpret the language, right?
That's exactly what it is.
It's speaking Russian, it has to turn it back into English, and it's always doing that one extra step instead of being natively going, oh, I can just read exactly what's in front of me. So that's the thing with proxy files. A lot of people who might be trying this and go, I tried this on my computer, but it didn't run really smoothly. I was having hiccups because I have an older computer. One of the things you can do is set the proxy files up so it uses these lower information restrictions on the footage. It'll allow you to edit just like it will, and what happens is on export it'll use the full files original files. Is that the way it works, or you tell me?
When you create, this is so hard to explain.
Because that's kind of the way that Filmora would do it. It would just set the proxies, but it would only use them during the edit. On the export, it would switch to the original files.
That is exactly right. So the proxies are they're connected to, they're dynamically linked with the original files. So,
So
when
on
you go to
export, it goes, okay, I know we've been using kind of some squashed down files that we can handle a little bit easier, but when we export, don't worry, we're going to use the full, project files that you originally had brought in.
That is correct, yes.
Cool. All right, so now we have this. Let's say we get to this point. We've got a project set. We've got the basic stuff. Whatever settings, a 4K project. We know the aspect ratio. We know what the frame rate is. We know that we've got some proxy files set up and all those things. What's the next thing we do? How do we start bringing things in and go, okay, well, I got a project set. Now we start building something.
So there are a couple ways to do that. When you're done with your settings, just hit save. And there are a couple ways to bring in your footage. The way that I prefer to do it is in the media page, and I'll tell you why. Oh, hold on. Give me 1 second here. I'm in a dual screen workflow, and that is just going to confuse everybody. There we go.
Oh, so that's one thing that, quickly, now I'm going to keep changing things, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing that people aren't used to is this actually in DaVinci Resolve. You can split out the screens, right? You can have you can separate things so that you can have maybe like the preview window up on one page and doing something, or maybe one of the other panes or one of the splits doing on the other side. So you're using more than one monitor to actually work the system. Tell me how that works out.
Yeah, so so DaVinci Resolve has the ability to use dual screen. Now, this isn't in every single page. There are a couple pages that are only single screen. So like the cut page, for example, you can't do dual screen. So if you switch over to the cut page and you're in a dual screen workflow, it'll automatically cut it down. Same thing with the deliver page where you export everything. It's going to take a dual screen and it's going to bring it down. But everything else, media, edit, fusion, color, and Fairlight can all be used dual screen. And as far as like moving things around, you can resize the windows. So you can resize, and this is in every page. You can just kind of make every section bigger or smaller, but you can't actually really move things around. What you can do in the edit page, so we'll go to the edit page real quick, and we'll come into workspace, and you can do dual screen. You can also, if you're doing dual screen, you can set your primary monitor, which for me is monitor 1. Where did I go? I lost it. There we go. So dual screen, turn it on, right? And right now you can only see one of my screens, but this is where I would do all my editing, this screen right here. On the other screen is where my media pool is. It's where my edit index, my edit history is, all my effects, and all of that stuff are in the second screen. And then
You've lost me already.
Yeah, I know. Let me.
You're so fluent in this. So if I'm sitting here, let's start right with that original window that we were looking at, which was the cut panel.
Page.
Page,
so the cut
Okay,
page.
so we're here. This is where we're starting. This is the default page, and we say, I just want to find my footage on my computer and bring it into my project.
Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over to media. All right. Let me get out of dual screen real quick. All right. We're in the media page. The media page is the best place to organize your project and bring your footage in. For
reference, that's the tabs along the bottom. We had started on the second one that's marked on the bottom, and you went back to the first as media, right?
I went back to the first. DaVinci Resolve, these pages down at the bottom, down here, are set up basically in order of operations. So you start, which is weird that they don't start it off when you open it up on the media page. I don't know why. But you would start with media. That's where you organize your project. You bring your footage in. Then you move over to cut. Cut is basically where you do your rough cut. It's where you figure out what part of each clip is going to go into your timeline.
Stop running over the horse with the cart here. Let's let's start with that media page.
Okay.
Let's just bring something and show me. Can I bring
something in?
Do I bring footage in here? Can I bring like if I'm using images, pictures? If I'm using sound,
Everything.
what do we start with? The basics. Does that all happen here?
That all happens here. So
all right, bring something in for us.
Step one is we're going to create a couple folders so we can keep our footage organized, right? So we're going to come down here. This is our bins. We're going to right click and hit new bin, and we'll just call this footage. if I can actually type correctly. And then we're going to create another new bin, and we're going to call that audio.
So they use the word bins, but is it a bit like a folder? You're just creating like subfolders that you're going to bring things into?
It is exactly a folder. Yes.
Perfect.
It is just a folder. And then there's other different types of bins. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, so we got footage, we got audio, and for good measure, just to keep things really organized, we're going to create a bin for timelines. You can have multiple timelines in one project. Again, we'll get to that later. All right, now we're ready to bring our footage in. The cool thing about the media page is it connects with all of the files in your computer. So this is basically the file explorer in your computer right here. You don't have to go outside or drag and drop or anything.
So you don't have to hit file and then search and then find that it's right there. It's like looking at
right
that.
There.
I love it.
So all of the footage for my open projects are on my D drive. In progress, videos, vlog. I title all of my my vlogs like Friends episodes. So this is the one with the new studio. And we've got footage here. So I've got A-roll and B-roll. And here's another cool thing. Let's say I've got my footage organized into A-roll and B-roll. I can take this bin or this folder, bring it into my bins, just drop it over footage. It's going to ask you if your frame rate is different than your project settings. It will ask you if you want to change the frame rate. I don't. And there you go. We've got A-roll. Take B-roll here and drop that into footage. And there's all my B-roll. And then we'll come up to audio. And this is going to be my music that I'm going to be using. And I'll just drop that into audio. And now all of my files that I'm going to be using for this video are in the project.
That's awesome. So you've got a nice organized section right here from the media page. We've brought in all those different things. And if you were going to do, maybe there was some static images, some pictures or something you were going to use, you can create an image folder, the same thing, image bin. And then you could bring folders of whatever, any individual files or complete folders and put them all in those bins. So everything's going to be nicely separated in that lower left section. We're bringing them in from up above. Upper left is finding the stuff from your computer. Lower left is these bins where we're going to bring stuff and organize and make sure we have it all set for this project. Is that correct?
That's correct. And there's a ton of stuff you can do in here. You can change the metadata. You can add labels and notes to each of your clips. You can create in and out points of different clips and create sub clips. Like you can do, this is basically the pre-production version of editing. This is where you do all of your preparation in this page. And the bigger the project you have, the more preparation you're going to do. But anything you need to do to prepare to edit can all be done within the media page.
Okay, so you don't have to. A lot of us are used to using things like, a lot of us are coming from Filmora, and we would do things like, well, you bring it up, then they do have some options, but most of the stuff was done in the timeline. We were bringing things down and then cutting them down in the timeline. But here we have this media section where if we want to, we could spend a little more time like reducing. I only want this clip from that piece of footage and things like that, and relabeling things and getting everything prepped so instead of having a messy kitchen, we have all the ingredients laid out. Is that fair?
That's exactly, yes. That is a very, very apt metaphor. Yeah, that's exactly it. This is your preparation page.
Cool. All right. So real simple stuff. You just brought in some very simple things. You brought in some audio. You brought in some video clips. So now that we have just this, you have like some music background. What would be like the next step for a lot of us is, okay, I brought a few things in. I got that without having to learn every button on this page. What's the next step that I got it in there? Now, how do I start a project? How do I now put this into some kind of a timeline and just start trying to do something with it?
Yep. Next step is you can head either to the cut page or you can head to the edit page. Now, both of these are great for cutting footage. You're going to get a lot more flexibility in the edit page, which is the page that we're on right now. You're going to get a lot more options. You're going to be able to like separate the audio from the video, do, J and L cuts, all the fancy stuff. If you want to go fancy, you want to use the edit page. If you're doing simple stuff, or you just want to run through and do a rough cut or something like that, the cut page is great for that, especially if you want to show my camera real quick, Daniel. I have a tool here that was specifically made for the cut page. This is the DaVinci Resolve Speed Editor. And this is literally made for the cut page. It works in the edit page as well, but it's got a bunch of different shortcuts. You can do multicam with it. You can set in and out points. You can do all of the things. And if you have this and you're using the cut page, you're just going to fly through and edit. It's amazing. I can't remember how much it is, but
You're just showing off now.
I am just showing off. This is my newest toy. Okay. I'm going to show it off. I haven't even made a video about this yet.
And it specifically is designed to work with DaVinci Resolve. So it's like
Yes.
it's an actual keyboard. I mean, it's a controller designed to do really fast workflow stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
It
well.
is specifically for DaVinci Resolve. So
We'll get there.
we'll get there. We'll get there. So now we want to start cutting footage. Before we have to do that, we have to create a timeline.
Okay, so right now, again, we're in the cut page, which would be
We are in the cut page, yes.
that's the second, the default page it opens up to, but we've already put stuff into we went to the first media page, tab, whatever you want to call it,
Yep.
brought in our stuff, we went to the second one. This is that basic where you said you could do the sort of basic stuff. Now now what's the next step? How do we do, we're creating a timeline? I'm used to having just the timelines there and you just put stuff in it.
Yeah, we have to create a timeline. And like I said, you can have multiple timelines within a project, which a lot of people like to do, especially
like
on
the
bigger
multiverse.
projects. Yeah, it is. Well, you can have different versions of each edit. You know, you have the rough cut in one timeline, and then you can copy that stuff over to a new timeline and refine it a little bit, and then copy that stuff over and do your editing on another timeline if you want. Like, you can just have it saved so you have all these different versions of your edit so you can always go back.
Yeah, see, for Filmora users like us, we'd have to save that version, then like copy, and then you have different saved projects, whole projects, not different timelines. It'd have to be like, yeah, I did this in one version, but I resaved it and made some different tweaks, so it'd be complete projects. So this is great. Yeah. This is just right in separate timelines. So show us how to do this.
Separate timelines. So, okay, so we're going to open our timelines folder. Or our timelines bin. Sorry, let me use a correct terminology here.
I'm sorry, I'm throwing you off.
Yeah, that's all right. And we'll just right click, create new timeline, and we can give our timeline a name. We'll just call this main because it's our main timeline here. You can designate the number of video tracks. We'll just, I usually start with 2 video tracks, and we'll say 2 audio tracks, which we'll use for dialogue. And since we're using them for dialogue, we're going to change our audio track types to mono. And we can choose to either use the project settings, so it'll be a 4K timeline, 24 frames per second, or we can uncheck this box and we can change the format. We can turn it into a vertical resolution timeline. So if you're going to create a video and then make a short out of that, you can copy the main timeline and then use vertical version in the timeline settings, and you're already set up to do a short.
So now could you literally have like 16:9 regular, widescreen timeline going on and a separate short? So like in this one thing you go, no, I'm making my short and my regular video at the same time?
Yeah, so here, we'll do that right now.
No, don't take me too far down that rabbit hole. I will get lost.
It's super easy. I promise. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our main timeline, right? So this is our main timeline. And for whatever reason, they didn't put it in the timelines bin, so we're just going to do that, okay? And now we'll create another new timeline. We'll call this shorts. Uncheck use project settings, come over to format, use vertical resolution, and now we're in a vertical resolution. And now we've got our main timeline and our shorts timeline.
Okay, so now when you're clicking back and forth, you're not going to see both of these at once. You would see whichever one you have activated.
Exactly, and that is indicated by this little red check mark here in the top left corner.
So seeing that most people are probably going to start, just by trying to bring in their 16:9 footage. I'm not trying to insult any shorts people out there. If we were on, you would click on the 16:9. You've now created that timeline. It's now activated. We see the red arrow in the upper left.
Yep.
Now, how do we start bringing footage into this 16:9 project?
So we're going to come back to our master bin here. So this is this up here acts. Sorry, I went over to the wrong screen. This acts kind of like the file path on your computer. So right now we're in the master bin, which contains everything. And we're going to click into footage. Okay, now it's master/footage. So now we know we're in the footage. We're going to start with some A-roll, right? And here we go. Now, the cut page has a lot of tools. There's a lot of stuff to do in the cut page.
Let's keep it simple. Talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old here, because I am when it comes to this.
So the first thing we want to do is get our footage into our timeline. The easiest way to do that, and the most like it is in Filmora, is to just take a piece of footage from the bin and drag it on to your timeline. There you go. Okay. And then what we can do is we can scroll through. All right. I'm going to start this clip right here. Right. And what we can do is we can come over. There are a lot of different tools here, but you can use keyboard shortcuts. There are a ton of keyboard shortcuts in DaVinci Resolve. The most common one for cutting footage is Control-B. And there you go. We just made a cut. And we're going to delete this piece of footage. And with the cut page, one thing about the cut page is it automatically ripple deletes. So if you are cutting a piece out of, let's say, we're going to make a cut here. And then we'll scroll down a little bit farther. And we'll cut here. If we want to take out this middle piece, it's automatically going to close that gap. That is one thing that you need to keep in mind in the cut page.
Is that something that's I'm trying to address the fact that we probably have a lot of Filmora users who are used to turning that on and off. In the cut page, it's going to do it by itself, always by default, and you can't change that ripple delete?
That is correct.
Okay.
So that's why I would say if you're doing something like a vlog style video, I would just use the cut page for a rough cut. Okay. I would just bring it in. I would cut out the usable pieces and then move on to the edit page.
And to be clear, right, this is the default thing. There's the next one that the default page we show in the cut page. It's the very rough stuff. This is the one you said for Fast and Furious, kind of stick it together. This is what it's going to do. And yes. The next tab over, I don't want to get deep into. What was the third page called?
The edit page.
Yeah, so that's the edit. That's where you'd be able to have much more controllability. That's where you're diving deep into how you arrange your timeline. Correct?
Exactly. So like I typically just use the cut page. Like I said, rough cuts. I don't even put the music in the cut page. It's just I run through the footage. I don't put the B-roll in. It's just running through the footage, finding the usable A-roll cuts, getting a rough timeline together. Because it's really fast, especially if you have that speed editor that I showed earlier. It's just it's really, really, really fast.
Cool. One quick question here. Now I'm looking at this and I'm wondering if people are seeing the same thing. I'm seeing the timeline that seems to be at the bottom, sort of a familiar thing for any video editor. But on top of the time, like I can see the playhead right in the middle of the footage, but above that narrow band that separates it from the preview window and the bins up top, it seems to be a smaller, narrower version. Is that the full timeline? What am I looking at here? Tell me what those two large section and smaller sections are.
Okay, that is a very good question, and you read my mind because this is a very important part about the cut page. So in Filmora and in most video editors, you're used to, if you want to get a really good look at what you're editing, you zoom in on the timeline to your piece of footage. So that way you can make more accurate cuts and all that stuff. And then if you want to see the whole timeline as a whole, you got to zoom out, right? Usually there's a keyboard shortcut to do that, but either way. With the cut page, That's gone. The cut page, you have two different timelines. You have your zoomed in version down here, and this is where you make all your cuts, right? And this is where you can see like the details of your edit. You can also, and then this top one is the bird's eye view timeline. So let's go ahead, and I'm just gonna throw a couple other pieces of footage in here. And you know what we're going to do? Can I do it? No, I can't do it in the cut page. What we're going to do is we're going to click on this piece, and we'll just throw it on top here. This top one is always going to be the zoomed out version of your timeline.
So is that the entire project? The narrow one is start to end of what you have, what you physically put in there so far?
Yeah, this is you're always going to be able to view every single video clip at once here. So that way, the way that it's set up is if you are, you know, you're working over here on this piece of footage, right? But then you want to jump down to the end of your timeline to a different clip, you can just click on here instead of having to scroll all the way down, and now you're closer to the end of your timeline. So it's just a quicker way to navigate. You can click anywhere.
Quick question. We got an honest question coming from the chat here. Yeah. Major question. Does $100, I assume they're referring to the Filmora cost, justify months of learning a new software and its headaches plus the hours and hours of downtime figuring out edits or watching cringy video editing tutorials? First of all, I take offense to the fact that you think Jay has cringy. You have not seen his channel. He's only slightly cringy at moments, just only like slightly. I am.
Yes, exactly.
But here's the thing. Here's one of the things I want to say. I've stuck with Filmora for years and years and years, very specifically because it was simple, it was easy, and it did what I needed to do for the kind of edits I was making. One thing Jay said earlier is just that. It may not be right for you. Maybe you can do everything you need. Maybe you don't even need Filmora. Maybe you can do it all in iMovie. What we're talking about here is I wanted to give people an alternative software, and not just an alternative that was similar to Filmora, because if you like Filmora, buy Filmora. What I wanted to give you was an alternative that's a much higher tier, pro-grade level software. So the investment in learning this software is it's probably going to be one of the last video editing softwares you'll ever need to learn, regardless of how you advance over the years. It has all of the things, Filmora, not to knock Filmora, it does what it does very well, but Filmora has a lot of things I used to hate. Like there was no ability to do things like put like my own custom VST effects on my audio. I couldn't add reverbs that I wanted to. I couldn't bring in compressors that I wanted to use, or if I had noise gates and things that I wanted to use, I couldn't do that. This software does all of those things and more, and it's the industry standard for color grading. It's better than anything. It's better than Adobe Premiere Pro, better than Sony Vegas, better anything, Final Cut Pro. This is the kind of software that not only can you make great edits, but you can. It's the industry standard. Even in the movies, they use this software to get the color and the look just right. So this is really a higher tier thing that people who are like, look, if I'm gonna jump off that cliff and learn something that is gonna take a while, what's the right one? I think this is the best option, mostly because you can download the free version and you can just start using it, right? As opposed to Adobe that's subscription-based. Every single year you pay again and again, and it gets expensive. And I was trying to give people an option for pro-level, affordability, and someone right here, and my good friend Jay, can actually show us how to use it. If that makes sense. But question, fair question.
It is a fair question, and I agree with you. And, as far as like, do I learn DaVinci Resolve or Adobe? Honestly, the only reason why I would, I do still know how to use Adobe, and I do still have a Creative Cloud subscription, and I still have, I don't have it installed, but I have the ability to install Premiere Pro whenever I want, is because occasionally I will do freelance editing work, and sometimes the client that I'm working with is, mandates that Premiere has to be used, So if you're not in that, like if you want to make professional looking videos, creative videos, you want the flexibility of professional software, and you have no intention of ever like working for somebody else, then I would say DaVinci Resolve is the way to go because it has everything you need. The only reason why I have Premiere Pro is because it's technically, you know, in the freelance world, in the commercial world, it's still the industry standard. When you're talking Hollywood, then you're getting into Avid and all sorts of crazy stuff. But yeah,
and I think that just to be clear here, the reason we're trying to give people, you know, when you change, it's exactly that. The hours it takes to learn something, to get down the rabbit hole. I said, let's approach this today from the point of view of someone who might have been using Filmora, and they're probably making YouTube videos, and they just want to come over and figure out, how do I get started? Because you go from something that was basically, you know, it was a go-kart, and you get put behind the wheel of a Ferrari, and you go, there are a lot more things going on, and we'd want to simplify it so that people can download it for free, try it on their computer, get it set up so it can run, and just go home, try it yourself, bring in a piece of footage, play with it, cut it, and use this as a guide to decide if it's the kind of software you might want to continue learning on, or if you want to try something else.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So from that point on, we've talked about, so now you're telling us this is great. We get a bird's eye view of the entire timeline and a close-up version below it as we're scrubbing through. And what are you using to move the playhead around? Are you clicking somewhere? What's getting it? Are you using keyboard shortcuts as you're scrolling through the timeline?
There's a couple different ways to do it. The most common way, especially in here, is to just take your mouse and up near where the time code is on the timeline, you can just drag and that'll scroll through. You also have the infamous, I think this was a thing in Filmora, was JKL? Was that
with
in Filmora?
I think I usually could just click into the timeline and use the arrow keys would take me through the timeline.
So the arrow keys, you can use the arrow keys, and that you can, up and down will bring you to the beginning or end of the clip. Mm-hmm. And then right and left will be frame by frame.
Gotcha.
Playing, you can either do spacebar. There you go. Or you have JKL. Now, I prefer JKL, and here's why. So J plays the content backwards.
Oh, wow.
K pauses, L goes forward. Now, if you want to listen to it, let's say you got a long video, talking head videos, they suck to edit because you just got to sit there and watch and watch and watch and watch. If you want to go through it quickly, you hit L twice.
Oh, boy. We
didn't hit it again.
That in Filmora. Oh, wow. Faster and faster.
Yeah,
so it's like super scrub. You can just scrub right through it and actually find the thing at like 2-3 times speed.
Yeah, and if you hold down K and L.
Oh, is this the slow-mo version?
Yep. Or K and J will go, if my keyboard, will go backwards in slow motion.
Backwards. That's awesome.
And
one thing I should say that you did that I just want to make clear, one of the things when we're in Filmora and we're creating extra video tracks and extra audio tracks, you did a thing I saw you do that you just grabbed the footage, brought it down, and dropped it in the timeline above your other track, and it automatically created another track. Is that what you typically do when you're putting something into another track? Or is there also another way to go, I want to add 3 more video tracks? Or is there, how do you usually approach that?
So you can do that. I was going to show that in the edit page because that's where it's going to make more sense. But actually, I'm going to have to show you in the edit page.
Okay. But typically in here, if you're kind of roughing something out, you go, it's going to be 3 different tracks. Let's say there's going to be like, a bunch of different layers. You got 3 different video tracks. You just grab it, bring it down to the timeline and drop it above the track that you're currently on.
Yeah, I just realized my mouse was on the wrong page again. I keep trying to click on the screen share. So you can right click and hit add video track.
Okay.
And it'll just add another video track, or let's delete that track. You can just drag here and it will it not? Oh, maybe it won't. See, I never do this in the cut page.
Oh, is it because, all right, you already have 2 tracks there, it's trying to stick it in there? It did it on the first one, so in general...
Well, because I started, remember when I set up my timeline, I started with 2 video tracks.
Gotcha.
So I try and predetermine how many tracks I'm going to need.
Gotcha.
Because
So in
that
this
helps
case
me stay
scenario, if we started
organized.
using the cut page, and let's say we wanted to add a few more tracks, that would be down on the left. Just right
Yep.
click. Is
Just
it right click?
Right click at the track head and hit add video track.
Okay, now it stacks on top. That we're kind of used to that from more users, and then you can bring something and drop it into that track.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, one cool thing, we're not going to go deep into this. I just want to show you one tool in the cut page that makes it super, super fast to work with. Okay. What we're going to do, I'm just going to real quick, I'm going to delete this real quick. Up here, there's a couple different ways to view your footage. Okay. Right now it's in timeline mode, so this monitor is looking at what's ever in the timeline. There's also source clip, where it's going to look at whatever video clip you have selected in your media bin. And from here, you can set in and out points, which I think were a thing in Filmora.
Yep.
And then when you drag from this into your timeline, it will bring only whatever's in between those in and out points into the timeline.
And this is something that not a lot of Filmora users actually use because it was tricky to figure it out. But what you're saying is if there's a clip up in the bin, the upper left where your media is, and you say it's an 18-minute clip, but you don't want all 18 minutes down in your timeline and then try to cut it down, you actually click on it, you change the view to, what are we calling that view?
This is source clip.
Source clip. It puts it up here in the preview, and you can say, I just want pre-select this portion of that clip, and then when you bring it down, it'll just bring that section?
Yep. So let's do it right now. Let's we'll just do a quick example here. So let's say I wanted to start my clip here. I'll go keyboard shortcut for in point is I, and we'll do an out point there.
Wait, did you hit O?
I did hit O. I was just
I
going to
is
say
in,
that.
O is out. Got it.
Yeah, pretty self-explanatory. Another reason why I love JKL, because if you have your fingers resting on JKL on your keyboard, I and O are right there. Whoops, I accidentally tapped it. So we'll do I, and we got our O point already set. So,
And
yeah,
just quickly,
I
I saw you can actually drag those in and out points once they're up there.
Yeah, you can drag them if I wanted to keep this longer. I can drag it out, and it'll give me a zoomed-in view of the audio waveform down here. So I can really decide.
Yeah, because I'm a huge, I edit by looking at the audio all the time. Like, I don't listen to when something stops. I'm like, I look at where the waveform ends and goes, okay, that's the quiet point. That's my cut point.
You're gonna love a really cool thing, but it's really just a speed editor thing. But it would convince you to buy a speed editor. I guarantee.
You don't have to convince me to spend money unless it's Filmora.
All right, so we
have a selection here. What do we do next?
We have a couple options. We can drag it into the timeline. That's quick and easy. We also have a couple different ways we can put it into our timeline. So we've got Smart Insert. Smart Insert will place the video in between the nearest cut to the playhead. So if I had 2 video clips in here, right? Let's actually do that real quick. We'll put
I was just going to say that. Show this in real time.
Right? And we'll put let's put a piece of B-roll here, okay? And footage. All right, A-roll. Let's say, is this where my, yep, here's where my in and out point was, right? Let's say I wanted to place that in and out point in between these 2 pieces of footage, right? But my playhead wasn't quite where the cut was. What DaVinci Resolve will do is it will figure out where your nearest cut point is. And if I click the Smart Insert icon, it'll automatically put it in between those 2 pieces of footage.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So you can do Smart Insert. You can append, which will just place your selection at the end of your timeline. You can do Ripple Overwrite, which is a little hard to explain, and I never use it, and you'll probably never use it, so we won't worry about it. This is the close-up tool, which I'll show in just a second. You can place the footage on top of, whatever clip is already in the timeline, or you can
by on top, do you mean it would add it to another track on
video
top
track?
Okay,
Yep.
so okay.
Yeah, so if I just come over here, hit place on top, it just added it to a new thing. And then the last thing you can do is just source overwrite. So it'll replace the footage in the timeline, basically.
Okay. Wow, a lot of options there.
A lot of options.
But just that at the end of the day, we're just talking about how to take the media on the cut page, get it ready, bring it down into the timeline. We're looking at the cut page, which is very rough, not the fine tuning and stuff.
So the fastest way to do it is either to drag from that source or just hit append, or if you're working with B-roll or something, do place on top.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. One other really cool tool is, let's say you have a talking head video. You know, if you're on the talking head portion for too long, it gets boring. People leave. This is very important for YouTubers and something that I use all the time. Let's say I wanted to change the camera angle here, but I only have a single camera. If I hit this button here, this is the close-up tool. It's going to place a 5-second clip, same clip here. And it's normally in a regular talking head setup, it would punch it in to about like 1.2 or something like that. And it would automatically change the position to keep your eye line create. So it's just basically automatic punch-ins to your video. To kind of keep
so it's
things
almost
moving.
like a close-up. Like it jumps
it does
to a
a close-up.
crop and it makes sure that it's centered. So instead of spending all that time cutting it and going, cut it, and then take a crop and zoom tool and zoom in and go, I need it to be, this is a one-click, boom, this section, I'm going to just change, I'm just going to zoom in, I'm going to crop in, I'm going to get a closer cut of that footage that's already in there.
Yeah.
Wow. Love it.
Yeah. And there's also a boring detector.
Well, that would be going off a lot with me.
Yeah. All of these little gray highlighted parts in the timeline.
Yep.
I have it. Here, I'll show you. There's a little icon over here with some Z's. If you click on that, and edits longer than 6 seconds are boring. So you hit analyze, and it'll go through your timeline, and any parts of your timeline, if a clip of footage is longer than 6 seconds long, it'll say, hey, it'll highlight it and say something needs to happen between here and here.
Wow.
So the video
Where
keeps
was that
moving.
Z2? Show me where that was. Where was it?
Top
where you
left of
clicked
the
it?
timeline. Just
Top left. Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah.
It's right. Yeah, I see it. Perfect.
Right.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So
See, these are all the things that, like, you know, some of the easier software, they don't have all these features. So you think, well, it's easy to use some of these easier using features, but the amount of steps it takes to do something like that, either we don't have these features or you have to sort of go through a lot of steps to figure things out and like actually watch and listen. And, you know, this is fantastic.
Yeah, so the cut page has a lot of stuff. So typically my general workflow, quick overview, I do a rough cut, I go to the edit, I refine the rough cut, put in all my B-roll, all of that stuff. And then I come back to the cut page and I use that boring detector to see where I need to do, use that close-up tool to change the camera angle, or maybe add an extra piece of B-roll, or maybe a graphic, or something like that. And that way I know I'm keeping the timeline moving at a good pace, and then I move on to color and audio and all that stuff. So
okay, let me ask you to do something for me here. Okay,
yes.
so I think we're all kind of getting what the cut page does. I love it. It's sort of the Reader's Digest version of putting your timeline together, right? So just get it in there, stuff it in there. You can tweak it later. An average person, I'm thinking, is going to say, I just filmed my footage. I didn't film a million things. Not that YouTubers don't do that. We do that all the time. If everyone knows, heavy projects. But simple, I filmed this one thing. I'm going to bring it in. Let's pretend it's a talking head. If you cut it up into a bunch of pieces and you got rid of, I think you've shown us how to do all of that delete. Yeah. Can you put together a quick timeline? I don't care if it makes sense. Just take a piece of footage in a single track, cut it into, 12 pieces, whether they make any sense or not.
So
and
bring it into the timeline as one piece of footage and then cut it up?
Yeah, just cut it up quickly, and so that we can take that and then move over to the next step and talk about, well, what if I wanted to put a transition in? What if I wanted to...
Got it.
What if I wanted to tweak it and get more detailed with the way that goes together?
All right, let's start it. Let's go. Bare bones here. One video track here. Where's my long? This is it. So I actually, for whatever reason, I don't know what possessed me to do this, but when I filmed this vlog, because I was just in one room and walking around pointing out different stuff in the room, I filmed it all as one piece of footage, basically.
Nothing wrong with that. That's how I roll. Hey, quick question. Where's the proper place to download DaVinci from? It's actually, is it the Blackmagic Design? Is that the actual?
Yep. Blackmagicdesign.com on the support page.
Okay, there you go. Perfect.
So I am going to real quick. We'll just act like I'm using real keyboard shortcuts. It's all the same stuff. I'm using. I'm going to be using Control B to cut. I'm going to be using backspace or delete to delete footage. And I'm not going to mess with in and out points because we're already in the timeline. So it's just going to be cutting and deleting. Okay?
Yeah, some quick cuts. Let's pretend it was someone looking at their footage and they're like, let me find the right lines. Just hack it together.
Now I'm gonna use my my speed editor to get through it quickly. So
you're so fancy.
Yes, I know. So here we go. We're going to go ahead, split the footage, and we do need, so normally you would have to select it and then you would hit delete. With the speed editor though, split, and then you don't even need to, there you go, boom. Split. And here's the thing that I said would convince you, Daniel. You can hold, there's a button on the speed editor called trim in. So you hold that down.
Oh, and you can slide right to the next thing. Oh, you don't have to go flying through your timeline. Find where you start talking again. That's so cool.
Yep. And so we'll just go roll. And lost my place. There we go. Boom. And we'll just do split. And for the purposes of saving time, we'll make one more cut. And split. And we'll just delete the rest of this. Boom. Okay. There you go.
Right, nice. So now this is a very typical thing where someone would bring their footage in. We know how to do that all. We know how to get it in the timeline. We've now cut everything out that we don't need. We've got the pieces of, well, this is, you threw it together, but this would be piecing that together. So now from here, someone says, okay, those are just very rough cuts of, I found the lines that I wanted to use. This is it. Now, how do we get to, the next tab is called the next page.
The edit page.
Edit page. So, and this is where we can dive a little deeper.
Yep.
So at the very bottom, you would then click the next page at the very bottom.
Yep. And that
all right, show us some magic there.
Edit. Here we go. So the great thing about the edit page and the cut page is anything you do in the edit page will be reflected in the cut page and vice versa. So these are all the exact cuts that we made in the cut page, all right here. From here, you've got a lot of different options. This is where you can separate audio from video, right? So that is something that I like to do. Now, right now, it's automatically separated. To unseparate them, there's a little chain link here, and you can select that, and now they're connected, and they move together no matter what. If I turn that off, I can just grab the audio, move that around, and maybe move the audio to a different track. And we can do maybe some J and L cuts here. Let me zoom in on my timeline real quick. So
J&L cuts for the people out there. We've talked about it on my channel. Is just when sometimes you want to have like the last words or something from the previous clip still being finished out while you start the next, the video or audio of the next clip. A lot of times we do that on YouTube edits where it's like you're really trying to keep a fast pace and maybe the last S of the word is trailing and you want to get right back into the next thing and have it fast paced. Easy way to do that. Have anything like and show them why they call that, like right there. That's what we call a J cut. And if you're wondering why they call it a J cut, is because it actually, if you look at how he pulled the footage in, it actually draws the shape of a J, the two short pieces, and then it goes over to the left to do that. I'm sorry, this would be an L cut. I'm sorry, I'm take it backwards. You would look at the top piece right there, and you pulled it over. So the top video and then the lower audio attached to it, the lower audio is longer to the right. So if you go straight down and over, it's an L cut. That's because it's trailing that audio from the first clip over, and it makes the shape of an L. And you can do the opposite with that too, depending on your perspective. But yeah, this is really cool. This is kind of what we know. This is familiar to a Filmora user.
Yep, this is going to be a little bit closer to what you know in Filmora. So the timeline works actually remarkably like the Filmora timeline. You can move audio around. One thing is, like, let's say I wanted to bring this piece of footage up, it'll automatically create a video track. If you wanted to add another track, you can hit add track, which will just automatically add another video track. Or you can hit add tracks, and you can actually, let's say I wanted to create not 13, dear Lord. 3,
that's unlucky.
Yeah, 3 new video tracks and 2 new
audio tracks. So this is similar to in Filmora, they have what they call the track manager. And does it also say, it's a little hard to read, you where those tracks are putting it above or below a certain track, you can assign where. So if you wanted to add 3 tracks above track 4 or 3 tracks squeezed into above track 1 and 2, you could assign where they're going to pop those new tracks in.
Yep, exactly. And then you can also choose for audio tracks whether they're going to be mono, stereo, 5.1, 5.1. You're only going to need to do stereo and mono, people. unless you're doing Hollywood stuff,
right.
Mono or stereo. For this, we're going to add 2 for, sound effects and music. So we're going to keep those stereo.
Perfect.
And we'll do add tracks. And there you go. We've got our 2 stereo tracks.
So now, if anyone's just looking there, it just, the other tracks above it now, is that why we saw those video tracks disappear? Are they just higher in the timeline right now, or?
Yeah, they're up here. So you can.
So they're there. So, that's an interesting way it displays, though. So it's holding one of the things we're used to in Filmora, this is an interesting difference you may not recognize because you don't use Filmora as much as you used to. You used it a couple of times. If you move through the Filmora timeline, everything moves. Like when you go up, the audio tracks disappear below, and you're going up. You're literally climbing a ladder. This is actually holding the audio tracks separate, and then you're able to scroll through the video tracks without the audio tracks moving. Is an interesting thing.
Yep, and same way, let's say I had like 15 audio tracks here, I can scroll down the audio tracks and the video would stay still.
Where are you clicking to differentiate from where you're scrolling, either audio or video?
It just depends on where. So right now I'm hovering in the audio section. There's a bar here, which unfortunately my zoom in isn't working.
Right.
Which kind of
But
sucks.
Basically, if your mouse is hovering in the audio section and you start scrolling, you're going to be scrolling through the audio tracks. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And if you bring your mouse above into the blue video tracks and you start scrolling, you're going to see your video tracks move. Ah, okay.
And there's also scroll bars on the right, so you can click and drag.
Perfect. Oh, love it. That's awesome. Okay, so in this situation, this is all kind of familiar stuff. Thank you so much. This was really helpful. So let's say we're doing some of these things in between those clips. Like if you have a bunch of clips put together, if you wanted to do like the next thing, like I'm not going to go crazy, I would just like to put a dissolve transition in between these two. How do we do something like that?
There are a couple different ways. So DaVinci Resolve, and there is a way to change your preferences here, but DaVinci Resolve has some kind of default transitions.
Okay.
So let's say I wanted to put a transition right here. All I would need to do is mouse in between those 2 clips, right? And you'll see the mouse icon kind of changes to
I can
show
see it
that
between
you're
the
in
second
between.
and third video clip. Yep.
Yep. If you right click, what just happened? That was weird. Right click. I can add a 2-frame cross dissolve. I can add a 4-frame cross dissolve. I can add an 8-frame cross dissolve or a 16-frame cross dissolve.
Wow.
So let's say I just want to do an 8-frame cross dissolve. And now If we play.
And there it is. Now, can you adjust how many frames? Is there a way to drag that?
Yeah. So again, mouse over the edge.
Okay, another very familiar thing to Filmora users. They usually find the transition up in a separate place, but we're used to stretching them to make the transition happen longer or shorter. So very similar thing here in Resolve.
Exactly.
Cool. Are there other transitions that are presets that you can? Oh boy, did I ask the right question?
Friend. Oh my friend. Okay, over. Let's. I'm gonna get rid of my media pool for a second so you guys can see it a little bit better. But over here, this is your effects library. There's a lot of stuff in here. I also have extra stuff in here because, I've gotten plugins and presets and all sorts of stuff over the years. But, and honestly, I've had some of them for so long that I don't remember what's default and what's not. But if we come into video transitions, just click on that. We've got dissolve transitions. We've got iris transitions, which are, oh yeah, here's the cool thing. If you want to know what a transition will look like, you just have to mouse over it, and it'll preview it for you.
Oh, wow. On your own footage, too. That's awesome.
On your own footage, too. Yeah. So we got a bunch of iris ones, motion, so some bar
And you're not
doors.
clicking. You're just mousing over it and just moving the mouse, and it's showing you what that would look like in the spot in the timeline that you're at. Is it in the spot that in the timeline, or is it using the previous two clips or something? Good question, Daniel.
That is a great question, and I used to know the answer to that.
But in general, if you're gonna, it doesn't really matter. But you can see how that's going to affect your footage. Very cool.
It looks like it's two different.
Right. Okay. So now let's say you just put a dissolve between the second and third clip. Let's pick something that you might want to use, something cool. And if you wanted to put it between the first and second clip, how would you do that?
Same thing. Just come over here. Let's say I want to do. Let's do edge wipe. I like doing edge wipes when I'm doing color grading tutorials to show the before and after.
Okay.
So
and it's a drag and drop. It's just like grab them, drag them, drop them in the timeline.
Yep. And then if I play it.
Cool.
There you go. So now this actually is a great segue because I don't like the way that the edge wipe acts normally, because it typically wipes, if I go frame by frame, wipes bottom to top. I typically like doing left to right.
Gotcha.
Let me introduce the inspector. This is going to be your best friend.
Oh boy.
So the inspector is where we change the parameters of whatever is selected in the timeline. Okay? The inspector can be found in the top right corner of your screen. You can activate it and deactivate it by clicking inspector in the top right corner of your screen. So I've got this piece of footage here. Right now we're in transition. Let's go to video. And here is where I can zoom. I can change the position. I can rotate. I can change the anchor point. I can change the pitch and the yaw. And I can basically do whatever I want for the most part here. I can crop.
That's actually so fast for some of us who are coming from Filmora. We'd have to like right click on the footage in the timeline, choose the individual thing that we want to have happen. Like I'm going to crop and zoom, and it would open the crop and zoom window. You'd have to set all the things, then say okay, and then close it out. This is all in the upper right. You're selecting the footage, and all of the options are right there. You just go, okay, I'm going to change all these things, and you don't have to keep opening separate windows to do it. It's right there in the upper right.
Yep. And if I take it too far, like I obviously did here, and I just need to reset it back to 0, if you want to reset an individual setting, you just click over that. You just double click over that setting. So let's say I want to reset the zoom. I just double click on the zoom, and it goes back to 1. Position back to 1. Or if I need to reset all of the transform settings, there's a little like arrow clock thing here.
The refresh.
The refresh clock goes back to 0.
Nice.
Reset the crop, all that stuff. This is also where you can change your composite mode, which is a little bit more advanced. Basically, let's just Basically, it's kind of like in Photoshop. You know, you put one thing over another thing, and you want to make it overlay or screen or add.
Yeah, and for people who use Filmora, they call it compositing as well. It's
okay.
Like the transparency. You can if you have 2 tracks, the one on top is blocking the one below, but you want to see a little bit of the below. You pull back the composite. So you're doing that, right? And it's probably in here. It probably has settings. Does it have blend modes of how it composites?
Yeah, that's what the composite mode is the blend mode. So you have add, color, burn, all that stuff.
Right.
And then you can change, right below that is opacity.
Oh, fantastic.
You can do speed change. Now, some of these may or may not be available in the studio version or in the free version. But you got speed change, so I can change the direction of the footage. If I wanted it to move in reverse, I can do that. If I want to set a freeze frame, I can do that, and it'll basically make a cut and turn the rest of the length of that clip into a freeze frame.
Okay, stop here for a second, because again, Filmora users, when we would add a freeze frame, it would actually insert it and extend everything. So like in Filmora, if you're in a clip and you say, hey, right click, add a freeze frame, it actually decides to preset about, say, 2 seconds. It'll add a freeze frame and move the entire everything in that project forward and insert this sort of a gray bar inside of the footage. Here, what is it doing? When you say you add a freeze frame, is it turned everything for the rest of the clip as a freeze frame, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, wherever your playhead is, that's where the freeze frame is going to start.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you set a freeze frame, it's going to stay a freeze frame until the end of the clip.
Can you, halfway between where it started the freeze frame and the end of the clip, could you decide that's where I want the freeze frame to end?
No, you kind of need to make that decision before you set the freeze frame.
Gotcha.
So let's go ahead and we'll just how do I? Oh, good old handy dandy Control Z.
Right. Undo.
So let's say I just wanted from here to here to be a freeze frame.
Yeah.
I just come back to the beginning of that selection and hit freeze frame, and it's just going to turn that whole selection into a freeze frame. So
so you're using the parameters of where you cut it to decide how long that freeze frame will be.
Exactly.
Cool. Very cool.
Yep.
So what other kind of things, like, okay, so here's some basic stuff. This is stuff that people do every day. They want to know how to put their footage, open up the software, get their footage in, get their audio in, get their images in, get them into the timeline, start adjusting things, putting in some transitions, that really straightforward stuff. Let me see. I'm trying to stay up with the chat too if there's some questions. Let me see here. Oh, Jay's battery exhausted. We've lost him.
Oh no!
We're never going to use you again, Jay. You're just going to have to speak over this.
Stupid cable, man.
There's a question here from, I'm going to pull up this question from Amy Johnson Crow. When you're in the free version, is it obvious what features aren't a part of it? Because she'd hate to edit something using premium features and then not discover that to export. Is there a way to see that? Do you know that, Jay, off the top of your head? Do you need a minute to get yourself plugged in?
I can talk and plug at the same time.
You are a multitasker, my friend.
I am.
This is the difference between a guy who's used to using DaVinci Resolve and multiple pages and Filmora users like me that are like, hang on, shut everything down. I can't do it all.
So I don't think there's a way to tell before you add an effect, but as soon as you add an effect that is only available in the paid version, you'll get that watermark in your on the video, and it'll do a little pop-up and say this is only available in the paid version. You can preview it, but
you mean when you add it to your project, not on export? Does it immediately add it in there?
Yeah, no, immediately.
Okay.
Immediately, yeah.
Gotcha. So if you tried something, you said, what is this? You bought, let's say, a transition. I'm not going to say that that's the truth, but let's say there was a transition that was a paid transition for some reason. If you brought it in, it would immediately throw a watermark up and let you know, hey, that's a paid feature.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Good question, Amy.
Okay.
Let's see.
We should be good now. It's showing that the power
He's
cord
back.
is connected.
He is back.
I'm back.
We had a
Okay.
quick question there. Someone asked
Stay.
if DaVinci Resolve has the capability. We'll see if you have the answer for this one. Oh, Megan's asking. We have someone in the room.
Oh my goodness.
Can you edit 360 footage in DaVinci Resolve?
I feel like the answer to that is yes,
Okay.
but I've never done it,
Okay.
so I don't know for sure. But
I know
feel
you
like
could
the
do it
ans-
with a few extra things. You could do it in Filmora. You had to use that third-party software, so I'm sure it's got to be the same thing if it's not native.
Yeah, I think you can do it in the Fusion page, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Jerry happened to throw in there. He said, when you hover over the effects themselves, you'll get a pop-up too. If you probably wouldn't, you've been using the paid version so long, you're like, I don't remember what.
I don't remember that at all.
Right? But that's what Jerry. Thanks, Jerry. That's a great tip there.
That
So
could be
hovering
new since I
Since you
upgraded.
purchased it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean I upgraded to Studio in version 16, and we're now on 18.1. So
Yeah, I think a lot of us are going to be learning along the way. A quick question we got here from Droning Western Australia. This is a thing they have in Filmora they call beat detection, where you can bring in an audio track, and if you're going to try to edit to it, it listens to the track and drops markers on the beat. Battery
I
exhausted
lost my
again.
battery again. Yes.
That's it.
Yeah, that's fine. I may just have to put a new battery in. No, that is not a thing in DaVinci Resolve. So that is
Score
there
one
is-
Filmora.
yeah, there are a couple things in DaVinci Resolve or that aren't in DaVinci Resolve that are in some of the more
The entry level, mid tier.
I wouldn't even say entry level or mid tier. I would say the more content creator centric software.
Right. They definitely
what I'm
Filmora was always built to be push button, right? Like, tell me how to do this easy. Like, I don't want to have to. Even that's what a lot of people liked about it was, don't make it hard. Do the work for me. Do the heavy lifting. Some of the stuff we're getting into here with this software is like, it does sort of assume along the way that you know how to look at a waveform. Like, the beat detection's cool, and I've used it a few times, but in general, I tend to know how to look at a waveform and go, that's the beat. and I'll find and I use markers. I'll put markers in my timeline and go, that's the marker I want to hit. That's the marker I want to hit. Because even beat detections only kind of get you close to the ballpark. So great question though.
That's I edit the same way you do. Like, even if I had the option for beat detection, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, quick question coming from the chat from people who are used to using Filmora. Do you need to render at all in DaVinci? Now, in Filmora, you would have a render button that would go through and it would, render the files, not export. It would just apply like a rough mix to the things that are in your timeline to optimize the playback.
Do you have to? That depends on your computer.
Does it have a render feature?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
That was my next thing.
Where is that at?
So that is, my favorite place to use that is actually on some of the more problematic, some of the like third party like drag and drop titles that I have tend to lag a lot. So what I will do is I will render those as kind of separate videos. But what we'll do here is we'll just do it with a video clip. Let's say I did a bunch of effects to this clip and now it's lagging and blah, 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 blah. What I can do is right click and hit render in place. And now I can choose my video format, same as choosing your optimized media in the project settings. So let's say I want to do DNHR 444 12-bit, which is what I usually do. Include video effects, include fusion composition, include color grading effects, and you hit render, and then you just choose the folder. I actually have because it does create another file on your computer. So I have a folder specifically for my render in place files, and then I just hit select folder and it'll render it out, and then I'll have the optimized version in my timeline. And we'll be good to go.
That's cool for a couple of reasons. One, because one of the things is when we do that in Filmora, it also has a file that it pre-decides where the render files go. This allows you to put it where you'd like here really quickly. In Filmora, you have to open up preferences and go through a couple of clicks. But you can render out just a portion. Like in Filmora, it's basically goes from beginning to end. And if it needs rendering, it starts at the beginning and just renders through. You can say, here's the trouble spot. This is where I got a lot of crap going on. I just want to render this area of my timeline because that's the hiccup. And you can actually just do those sections?
Yes.
Wow.
There's a caveat to that.
Like caveats.
Yeah. So I can't, like, let's say all three of these clips here were one big massive spot, right? I could highlight them and do the render in place thing, but it wouldn't like render out one single clip. It would give me 3 clips, which I guess is a good thing. If I, let's say, wanted to make these just one single clip and do a render in place, the first thing I would have to do is right click and do new compound clip. And then I could give it a name like, I don't know, intro. And I would hit create, and basically it just combined all those clips into one big one. And then I can render this in place and have an optimized version of this.
So real quick question for people who are used to using Filmora. What if you wanted to render the whole project? How would you go about rendering everything you have on your screen? Do you have to, could you just select everything and hit render?
No, that is a setting up in the top menu. You would come to playback. And this is where you can say, like, if you have proxies that you're working with, there's lots of stuff you can do here, but you can choose to disable all your proxies, prefer proxies if you have them, or prefer camera originals. So that's where you can set up that. Timeline proxy resolution. This is going to basically determine, are you playing back at full resolution, half or quarter resolution?
Yeah, people for Filmora users are used to seeing that on the upper right under the preview window.
Yeah. And now, to answer the question, render cache is where we're going to find how to render the entire timeline. So you can it's never really going to render the entire timeline by default. There's a couple different options here. You have none, smart, or user. User is something that you set up in preferences. Smart, basically, DaVinci Resolve is going to determine how much power is it going to take to play this part or this clip back smoothly. And if that length, exceeds a certain threshold, it's going to render that clip automatically.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
I like that you're not waiting for an entire. Sometimes in Filmora, you change one thing and it throws off the entire rendering of the whole project. You have to go render the whole thing again, just because you moved or like you added something to the timeline, and it can change everything. So this is much more. It's much more precision, right? It's surgical in the way it's doing it.
The only time that is going to happen is if we are doing what we did before, where we dragged in a clip, and then cut it up in the timeline. Mm-hmm. If DaVinci Resolve determined that clip needed to be rendered in order to play back smoothly, then every time you make a cut, it's going to re-render.
Gotcha. All right. And it'll just keep doing it ahead of time. All right. Quick question here. I want to make sure we keep this moving as much as possible. Very obvious things that most users are going to do. One big thing that I think is missing here, and you mentioned it earlier, titles. If we now want to add some text over our edit here that we have going on, we've got things laid out nice. We've got some transitions going on. We've got all kinds of rendering figured out. We know how to do that. We want to add some titling and some text. How do we do that, Jay?
That can be done in the effects library. If we come down to conveniently named titles, let's go all the way up. These are some basic titles here that DaVinci Resolve has built in. So you got a left lower third, a middle lower third, a right lower third, scrolling text. Same thing. If you just mouse over it, it'll do the thing.
Yeah, it shows you what it does. I love that.
And then there's regular old text. just a regular old text thing. And then there's Text Plus that gives you the ability to just kind of add some oomph to it. So we'll do one of each. So let's do a basic text, right? Basic title here.
And is this much like people who use Filmora know that pretty much whatever fonts you have loaded into your system, your computer, for the most part, get reflected in the software? Is that true of DaVinci as well?
Yes, that is true.
Cool.
So let's go ahead and select our text here. And again, in the inspector, because our inspector is where we adjust the parameters of whatever is selected in our timeline. Now we can change our text to this is a stupid title.
And inspector, our window in the upper right, that's sort of when you select that thing in the timeline, the inspector, like in Filmora, anything you click in the timeline opens up like a deeper dive in the upper left. Here, if you click in it in the timeline, it's opening up the inspector, which is the same thing, deeper dive into that component, that asset in the upper right.
Yep. Now it's not going to open it. So if you don't have the inspector selected and you select text, it's not going to open up the inspector. Does it do it if you? Oh, it does if you double click though. So there you go. So you'll have to double click the thing in the timeline to automatically open the inspector.
Cool.
But yeah, you can change your font again, mouse over the font and it will preview it automatically. So we'll just do that one. If there's different font faces, like, italic, bold, all that stuff, you can change that here. You can change the color. So you can do a predetermined color, or you can do whatever custom color you want. And, basic stuff. Size, tracking, which is the spacing between the letters. Again, you can reset all of that stuff.
One of the things that Filmora had historically didn't do, but Filmora Pro did, can you rotate the stuff on its axis, the titles, and the text?
Yes. So yeah.
Not that we usually do it in because you can, there's the regular spin, but can you do the Star Wars effect? Can you rotate them on their axis so they fold back or left to right, X or Y axis?
Not this particular text. This is just basic text.
Okay.
So if we wanted to do stuff like that, come here, we'll grab a Text Plus. And at first glance, it's going to look the same, right? But we can do a lot more with this. So let's go ahead and select this. This is a smart title. All right. So again, we'll just, why not? We'll do that one and keep choosing ones that don't have a different font face. We'll go with yellow. Why not? And again, same stuff, size, tracking. You can change the anchor, the vertical anchor here. No, that was the wrong one. Where is it? Direction, horizontal, reversed horizontal. So yeah, this is where we start getting into some cool stuff. So we can do reversed horizontal. So if you wanted to flip the text, you can do vertical, reversed vertical. We're just going to go horizontal here, line direction, top down, bottom up. We can do right on. So, okay, keyframing. Should we talk about keyframing real quick?
Yeah, give us a quick example of keyframing something. So this is like text keyframing.
Yeah, so let's say, and basically anything can be keyframed. Okay, let's just put that anything in DaVinci Resolve almost can be keyframed. Position, zoom, anything. But let's say I wanted to do kind of a quick right on effect here, right? So let's say we're at the beginning of our title here. These little diamonds next to each setting are keyframes. So we'll set a keyframe. And let's say I wanted it to come to be right there. it'll automatically set a new keyframe when you have a change.
Oh, so the minute you move the playhead and you made a change in the title, it dropped a new keyframe in there automatically.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Now, let's say I wanted to do a write-off as well. What I would do is I would move the playhead.
Hey, tax season's coming. We need all the write-offs we can get.
Exactly. God, you tell me.
I'll be here all night.
Move the playhead to where you want the write-off to start, and then you click that diamond again. It'll set another keyframe. Move it to the end and write off. And when you play back,
very cool. And then it disappears. Real quick question. What if you wanted to move keyframe? Can you, if you want to keyframe, not just it being written, but let's say you wanted to have it like move across the bottom of the screen, the entire complete sentence roll into the screen and then maybe roll back off. Is there a way the keyframe, the positioning on the, in the preview window and move it around and have a keyframe that way?
100%. So let's go ahead and, you know what I want to do? I'm going to do something really cool. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go over, there's a bunch of different tabs here. So you've got your basic text tab, right? Which we've already talked about. We've got layout, and this is where we can start doing what you talked about. So let's do this. All right, we're going to start right here.
And is this all, are we paying attention to this, where the playhead is at when we do these things? Are those two?
The only reason why I had the playhead where I was is just because I needed text to be visible on the screen.
Oh, so you could grab it and move
position.
it. Yeah, right.
So let's go ahead and move back here, and we're going to set a keyframe at the position that we set. And now let's just go to right here. We'll reset our center, which should set another keyframe. Did I not set a keyframe at the original position?
Yeah, I might have missed it.
Well, that was not cool.
Jay, you're supposed to be an expert here.
I am an expert, but experts make mistakes. No, look at that. Okay. There we go. Set. Oh, and if you accidentally create a keyframe you didn't want to create, you can navigate your keyframes. There's little arrows that show up on either side of the diamond.
I had a similar thing. There was the keyframe and little tiny arrows that are hard to see, and that'll move you from the next one to the next one, left or right.
Yep, like I
Gotcha.
Totally didn't there. Okay, here we go. Now we're going to do what we wanted. So if I did this correctly, this is going to play, and we're going to roll in. We're going to slide in from the right as it's typing on.
Oh, cool. And then disappears.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, we covered a lot of ground here today, and so much that it's become pitch black midnight where you're at.
Yeah, right.
From this point, real straightforward kind of stuff. I dig what's going on. We could talk all day about this. From this point, let's say this is the project. We've got it. I've got it edited. I had my text. I got it cut. I got my transitions. I got my audio all where I wanted it to be. How do we export this thing?
Export? Easy. Yeah. We go to the deliver page.
Okay, deliver page. Down the bottom, very
Far
last.
Right.
Yeah, okay, very last page.
Very last one. And you've got a lot of options here. There's so many options, and the options.
Think like a YouTuber here. I know it's hard for you with your videography.
You want to think like a YouTuber? I'm gonna show you exactly. You want to go quick and dirty?
Yes.
YouTube preset. Let's do YouTube 4K. You can choose a different whatever video codec you want. So your choices in the free version, I think, are just H.264 and H.265. Because I'm on the studio version and I have a new 4000 series NVIDIA GPU, I also have AV1. But I'm pretty sure H.264 and H.265 will be the option for most. So it's a H.264, type, go NVIDIA, It's just basic settings here. Encoding profile, auto, base main, high 444. I would keep it on auto for most people. Which audio track do you want to? It's going to default to your main bus. Audio codec is AAC, and you can choose to upload directly to YouTube. So you can create a title in here. You can create a description in here.
Oh, wow.
If you've already got a thumbnail made, which Daniel will tell you is a very good idea, have a thumbnail made before you make the video, right? You can select upload thumbnail.
Oh, wow. You can actually all at once. It's uploading not only your video, but your title, your description, and your thumbnail.
This is brand new with DaVinci Resolve 18. And this is really cool. Let's say I had markers through all this. You know what? Let's real quick. Just to give an example. Hit M for marker, which I think is pretty universal. If you hit M again while you're still over a marker, it'll open up a little dialog box so you can name that marker. So we'll just call this beginning. Hit done. Let's go to the middle here. We'll hit another marker. We'll call this middle. And we'll just come down to the, what is this doing all the way out here? We'll just call this end. Done. All right, come back to the deliver page. So we're uploading to YouTube. This is a video. You can type in your description. Like my son wrote it. And chapters from markers. So it'll actually read the titles of all your markers. It will create chapters and put them in the description of your video.
Oh, wow.
If you have multiple different color markers in your video, so like let's say you have red just to remind you that you need to put B-roll somewhere when you come back to it later, but you use just blue markers for your titles, you can tell it all the chapters are going to be the blue markers.
Oh, cool.
And when you upload it, you will have your chapters in there, which saves a ton of time. So yeah, you can upload. You can set your visibility, private, public, or unlisted. You can even choose the category: film, animation, auto, and vehicles. All that stuff that you usually have to choose. You can choose all of that right here, and you add to render queue. Oh, I didn't choose a path. I didn't choose where I was going to save the hard copy of the video.
Oh, so it's saying, hey, before you upload it to YouTube, we also want a place to save the entire video. Is it doing it simultaneously?
Yeah, no, it's going to render it out and then it's going to upload.
Okay.
So we'll just save it there, and yeah, it'll add it to the render queue, and you just hit render all. And it'll start rendering it out. It'll upload it.
Make sure we understand the language here. By render, do we mean export?
Export. Okay. Render is export.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Very cool. One quick question. There's another thing that a lot of people like to do sometimes, and Filmora finally got around to doing this recently, is allowing people to export just a portion of their timeline. If you're going to do a snippet of something, do you have the ability to export markers and go, I only want to export from 30 seconds in to 60 seconds in?
Yep. So what you would do, that's the whole purpose of there being a timeline in the deliver page. You can, let's say I just wanted to render out the part where this title is. What I can do is hit I to set an in point, O to hit an out point, and it will render all the parts of my timeline.
So I and O are our favorites when we're trying to find in and out points, and that's going to be our export. It'll only do what you just did there. And I'm assuming you can grab those up above where the arrows are and slide them too?
Yes. And then what you would do, so this one right here, this is going to be my whole timeline. So what I would need to do is we'll just do this untitled 2. And then when I add it to the render queue, this first one is going to be my full video. This second one is going to be just that section. And to render all of them, I need to select both of them. So I just hold down Shift and select the ones that I want, and then I hit render all, and it'll render this one, then it'll render this one.
Oh, wow. So it's really, in Filmora, you'd basically have to do the thing, export, and if you wanted to do a different version, you'd have to come back and change the settings and go, oh, I just want to do a section. This is actually creating a queue that says, like, oh, do this first, but then I also want you to do a different action, and then after that, do a different export action, and you can actually put them all in line, getting ready to do their things. And once you select them and say render, which export in dumb language like me, it'll start exporting all of those different actions based on what you've told the software you want it to do.
Yep.
Love it. Man, that's awesome. Now I know there's some other tabs in here. Quickly, I want to keep this digestible. There's a couple other pages. Yes, correct. Yes,
pages,
that we skipped
tabs,
over, like the
whatever.
audio page. Can you quickly show us the audio page so people who might want to do something with the audio, they can control it, EQ it, do anything like that?
Yep. So here we go. Fairlight is audio. That is the first, I guess, second over from the right. It's got a music symbol. It's kind of hard to miss. Music note. Sorry. Why did I call it a music symbol? Let me clear my in and out points here. Okay. So here we actually have, you have heard Daniel use this term a lot, talking about Reaper. This is a fully functional DAW or DAW, Digital Audio Workstation. So basically everything that you can do in Reaper, you can do right within DaVinci Resolve, which is really cool. It supports VST plugins, and you can do all the things. You can, and you can do them all at the track or the clip level. So let's say I wanted to put some EQ on this entire track. I select the track. Oh, I can relabel the track if I want, but I select the track. I can come over into my mixer and I can go into Dynamics, which is this yellow line. You just double click, opens up Dynamics, turn on a compressor, play around with your settings, do your makeup gain, boom. You can also do EQ across an entire track, which is very handy for talking head videos where you have one audio source on one track, or even one audio source on two tracks. You can copy settings between tracks, or you can actually create submixes to bounce all of the dialogue for those two tracks into a new track.
Also very useful because, like in Filmora, if you had a bunch of different audio clips, there was never a good setting in the master controls to go, I want all of these clips that, they're all, I cut my voice up, but I want them all to be, this EQ. You could, you'd have to EQ one, then you'd have to copy the effect and paste it onto all the other ones. But this is controlling everything on the track. You're applying this like a true mixing console. Anything that's on this track is going to get affected this way if you choose to. Yeah,
this Fairlight, both Fairlight and Fusion were both external apps. So these were different softwares, different companies that Blackmagic Design acquired and then integrated them into DaVinci Resolve.
The real question, though, did they charge more or did they just add it into the software?
It's funny, like
was that a shot across the bow?
That might have been. But no, the funny thing about Blackmagic Design, remember when it was just a color grading tool, it was like I don't remember. It was a ridiculously expensive system.
Yeah.
And the longer they've gone, they've added more, but now it's,
more
a one-time thing of $295,
We like them.
It's really cool. But yeah, you can do anything you want. You can add plugins. You can, like I said, create submixes. This Fairlight, when it was a standalone thing, it was literally built for video post-production.
So here's where we could, EQ, can add compression, get everything leveled out, change the tonality. We could add reverb to stuff. All those can happen right here in the audio page. The audio page, yes, audio page. What's the other? There's one more page in here that we didn't touch, I believe.
There's two more pages we didn't touch.
Okay. Don't let's do it.
We'll save the best for last. So let's go to Fusion. Fusion is scary. This is the thing that everybody runs away from. Okay. This is
keep it simple for us here.
I'm going to. Fusion is visual effects. It's compositing, just like Photoshop is a compositor. The biggest difference is where Photoshop deals in layers and After Effects deals in layers. Fusion deals in nodes. But basically, if you don't know what compositing is basically putting something on top of another thing and playing around with it so it all looks like it's one thing. And that's what Fusion is for. We'll go ahead. We'll do something super simple, okay? Just to show you real quick. Media in is the clip that you're bringing into Fusion. Media out is your final result. You have two monitors. Monitor 1, I usually have whatever part of my composite I'm working on. Media out, or the second monitor is usually my current final product. Okay.
Quick question though. Now, when I'm looking at this, how do I know what I'm looking at from that project?
Let's start here. We're going to go back to the edit page. Okay. I want to do something. I'm going to delete my transitions real quick. It might help if I zoomed into my timeline. And also, my brain is starting to not like me. There we go. Let's delete my transition here. Okay. Let's say I wanted to put just a big black circle over my face, right? There's a couple things I can do. I can select the clip and just go into the Fusion page and it'll do that, but it sometimes gets a little wonky. The best way to do it, if you want to work with something in Fusion, you select it in the timeline, you right click, new Fusion clip, and it'll turn it into a Fusion clip. And then if it's selected and you go into the Fusion page, and now you are looking at the clip. This clip is this is basically the timeline where in that clip you are. This clip is 37 frames long. All right. So I've got my original, which I'll put in here.
How did you just put that in the first window?
There are two little dots.
Okay.
Right below the node, or you can select it and just hit the number 1. And if you want it in number 2, then you just put it in number 2.
Oh, okay. So you just select it, pick 1 or 2, and it'll put it in that screen. It's probably easy for dumb people like me.
Very. That's the easiest.
I love it.
That's the easiest.
Jay.
Yeah, that's the easiest thing you're going to do in Fusion. All right, here we go. We're going to do a super simple composition. Black circle over my face. Okay? So let's create our black circle. Easiest way to do that, really, from where we are, is with a background node, which, don't be confused by the name. You can use background nodes for anything. This toolbar here has a whole bunch of commonly used tools. And this first one just happens to be background. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to drag a background node onto our little node area.
Okay. Now, does it matter where you put that in the node area?
No.
Okay.
But
so is it a bit like running cables, though? you can kind of put them anywhere you want, but trying to keep something structured is probably a good thing to do.
Yes. And there's a very easy way to do that. If you just right click in an empty area of the node graph, you just go down to Arrange Tools to Grid. And now, wherever you move it, it's just going to snap to the grid.
Oh, nice.
And it's going to be much easier to keep it connected. Okay, so we need to see this. We need to make our black circle out of this out of this background. So what we're going to do is select our background. We're going to press the number 1 on our keyboard, and you see we have a black background. We also need to place this background over our original footage. It is currently just kind of floating there in the ether. It's not connected to anything. What we need in order to do that is a merge node. A merge node does exactly what it sounds like. It merges one thing to another thing. Easiest way to select a merge node or to create a merge node, grab the thing that you want in the foreground. There's a little square on the right side of the nodes. You just select that, drag over to the square of the thing that you want in the background, And now we've created a merge node. And if we mouse over these little orange and green arrows that nobody can see because it's too small, but we can see that our original footage is going into the background of our merge, and our black background is going into the foreground of our merge.
So effectively, even everything we just saw there is you just took a layer of black and put it over everything.
Yes.
Okay.
And now, because I sneakily saw it in the chat, somebody said, can you mask? Yes, you can. And that's what we're going to do to create our circle. Okay, we're going to grab another node. Okay, so we're going to create a circle out of this black background. We need to mask it. In order to do that, we select our background node. And we can come up here, and there are a few different ways of creating masks. We can just create a basic rectangle mask. We can create an ellipse, which is also called a circle, which we can also turn into an oval. Basically, it's a round mask. We can do a polygon mask, which is you can make a bunch of straight lines that connect to each other, or we can do B-spline, which will kind of round it off naturally and whatever. We're going to do super simple ellipse, and it already created a circle mask. We can resize that mask. We can just come up into our screen here, and we can grab any one of these edges. We can change the shape, or we can, with that mask selected, we can come over and we can make it a soft edge in our inspector. So you have the inspector in all of your pages. So that's really cool. We can change the center of our mask right here, the width, the height, the angle. You can keyframe all of that. So if I wanted it to spin, I can bring my playhead to the very beginning of the composition, keyframe the angle, and go one more frame. Oh, nope, one frame back. And I can just spin it, spin it, spin it, spin it, spin it, spin it. And now, if I come back and I play, I've got a spinning black circle over my face.
I saw that in an early Star Trek episode. So let me ask this question, Jay. So really simple, because these are nodes. So you get each little element that you're doing here, right? And you say, here's the in and out, basically. To begin with, you had two screens. You had like, this is what it is, unaffected. And then the second one was the final output. Mm-hmm. Does it matter on either? Because you got like sort of like on each one of those nodes, there's like a dot at the beginning. On the left side of it, there's a dot on the right side of it. How do you know where to connect each thing? Like, how do you know what's an in, what's an out? Like, how are you making those decisions when you bring something in? Because I noticed when you brought the first thing, what do you call it, a background node? Mm-hmm. It was like you grabbed it on the right-hand side and attached it to the right-hand side of the number one image. I was like, why did you choose the right? How do you know which side to touch and grab and pull things from?
So on the right-hand side of every single node, by default, so if I disconnect this real quick, by default, when you just have a node floating there in the ether, there is a square on the right side. That is your node's output. Every single node has this. So what we're doing is we're basically just connecting the output of our background node, to the output of our media in node, which was our original footage, and it will create a merge node and do this. So what's happening is it is connecting the output, which is that white square that's on the right side of every node, to the input of a merge node. The inputs are the triangles, the outputs are the squares. And each colored triangle represents something different. So the green is foreground, the orange is background, and blue is mask.
Gotcha. That'll take a little time for me to learn to get it like smooth with it.
If you can't remember, you can just mouse over it. Or I think if you hold, is it shift? If I hold shift and drag, No. There's a keyboard shortcut. If you hold something down and drag it over a merge node, it'll kind of just pop up and ask you which input you want to use. But you can also just mouse over it.
What's interesting is it's almost like plumbing, right? We're so used to do it. From Laura uses do it. It's almost like, no, you want the water to go from here to here to here to here, here, and then back out. So it's almost like a bit, not quite exactly like that, but a bit of plumbing. Like you're rerouting the way the signal goes through here, and then goes out. And I think if you can get that in your head as you're just interrupting the signal and putting something in there so that before it ends up being the final product, we're going to divert it and have it go to the mask or have it go to a color or have other things happen to that stream of what's happening on that clip.
Yeah, it's exactly it. You're creating a pipeline, you know? Yeah. And you can do all kinds of things with it, and you don't.
That's going to be a much deeper dive, but that's cool. Like deeper dive. I think you could probably get lost in this. This is probably one of those things like you'll probably spend more time mastering this particular page than you will like a guy like me who has an audio background. I'm not afraid of mixing, and most of us in here are used to bringing in video clips and doing that in a timeline. So the cut page will make sense. The more detailed media page, am I remembering the names right?
Yes,
would make sense. But then when we get into this is what was so the Fairlight I would understand. But what's the name of this page again?
This is the Fusion page.
The Fusion page, and this is where you're getting deeper into this node-based system where you can create a lot of visual effects that are happening in your project.
Yes, and again, we're talking not industry standard tool, but industry standard workflow. The industry standard for visual effects compositing in Hollywood is a software called Nuke, and Nuke is a node-based compositor. Just like Fusion.
Yeah, I think that a lot of us have been using these sort of like Filmora type things where they're very point click and it's not very deep functionality, but it does it quickly. This is going to give you a lot more depth and control, but there's a bit of a learning curve that comes with it.
Yes. Yeah.
What I like is that you know what you've done here in this project actually looks exactly like you do in real life. Look at the camera, look at the plaque on the face. I think it's a perfect reflection of your real life situation.
I'll give everybody a quick tip if you really want to dive into Fusion. If you come into your effects panel, if you come down to the I'm in the right one. Okay, yeah, here we go. Let's go into, DaVinci's not, okay, there we go. If you go into templates, Fusion, you got a ton of stuff here. Let's say we'll do something super easy, like a color wheel. If you drag the color wheel template into your node graph. Oh, is that not? That's not what I thought it was. Hold on. Let's try something a little bit more. Okay, I'm not going to look too deeply into it. Basically, if you go into here, there are some templates where it's already just a bunch of nodes mixed together. And if you just kind of dive in and start picking it apart and seeing what each node does, it's a really good way to learn Fusion. And
can you, silly question, like you just did this, can you create this fuzzy black node system and save it as like your own preset custom node?
Yes.
So if you did something once, you go, I can save that because I use that a lot in my edits. I tend to do this thing and it would be great, whatever that might be, like a block coming up that you wanted to put, I don't know, behind text or something like that.
Yeah, you can do that in Fusion. You can create, lower thirds and all sorts of stuff that you want to do. And you can, you can do all that stuff. It's kind of a pain in the butt. There's great videos about it on how to save those things to be able to be reused. But it's an involved thing that I'm not going to go through now.
Yeah, no, I don't want you to. But the very last thing I do want to talk to you about, because we'd be remiss if we didn't mention this, is the color grading. That
was the last page that we hadn't gone into yet.
There we go. Show us that thing.
Like I said, we're saving the best for last. Yeah. All right, color grading, fun stuff. Let's go to a clip that doesn't. Oh yeah, by the way. Real quick thing, very important to know about DaVinci Resolve is order of operations, okay? You'll notice that when I click over to the color page, I've got that black dot on my face, and that is because DaVinci Resolve processes Fusion before it processes color. So anything that I do in the Fusion page will be affected by anything that I do in the color page.
Is it from left to right? Is it literally every page is in order from left to right at the bottom?
It is literally from left to right.
Okay.
If you follow from left to right, you're good. You organize, rough cut, finesse cut, visual effects and compositing, color grade, audio, done.
But there's nothing stopping you from like bringing some footage in, color grading it first, then going back and adding effects, is there? Other than that, color grading might change would it change the overall color grading of any effects you add?
Yes.
Okay. So the black dot would be color graded when you added the black dot because the color graded comes after.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But so there you can create empty Fusion clips in the edit page. And so if you're going to do titles or graphics or anything like that, I would always suggest creating them in an empty Fusion clip. That way you are not going to affect them with color grading, if that makes sense.
Show us some of this simple. Most of us coming from Filmora had very basic color grading stuff. I mean, and this is next level stuff. So show some people some basic stuff, looking at the footage, understanding the histogram, just kind of looking and going, what does this actually do? There's a lot of buttons for color grading.
There are a ton of buttons in color grading. Okay. So, thing that you need to know about the color page, it is again node-based node-based color grading. Okay, so you actually split this up into steps, and you can do a lot of really cool things with it. Okay, we're going to do a basic color grade of this clip right here, and what we're going to do first, order of operations, we're going to do basic contrast, white balance, saturation first, okay? We're going to do it on this node here. So we have this node selected. Let's go ahead. Now there's a couple ways to do contrast. You have your basic contrast slider like this, okay? Double click on it to reset. You can also, if you want, use curves. We have color curves here. So a very famous type of curve is an S curve where you bring down shadows, raise highlights just a little bit. You can even raise those blacks if you want, just a bit, give you that nice
understanding
look.
From a lot of people who they've just started adding curves to Filmora. From left to right, when you're looking, what you're seeing here, left, everything to the left, much like an equalizer, everything down to the left would be darker or the lower stuff, and then everything to the right would be your brighter tones. You know, so you're going darker, mid, and the highlight tones left to right when you're looking at this, what you're calling an S curve and those peaks, correct?
Exactly. Yes. So we've got a nice little curve here. Now with color grading, there's two amazing colorists, DaVinci Resolve, on YouTube that I would highly suggest checking out their content. One is Darren Moston. The other is Cullen Kelly. And Cullen Kelly kind of gave me my biggest lesson with color grading, which is always do broad strokes first. Okay. So we're adjusting our contrast. We're going to adjust our exposure a little bit. We're a little bit too overexposed here, I think. So we're going to bring down our exposure. And
where were you just clicking right there for the exposure?
Okay, so these are color wheels. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I got lost in my own workflow here.
That happens. You're too fast for us.
See, these are color wheels. Color wheels are exactly what they sound like. They are wheels that adjust the color and exposure of the different, we'll call them luminance ranges. Lift, gamma, gain. In other words, shadows, midtones, highlights. And then you have offset. Offset adjusts the entire thing. So if I wanted to put a purple cast over my entire image, I could just put purple over my entire image. If I wanted to adjust the exposure of my entire image, I use the offset wheel. Okay?
And that's that little wheel slider down underneath.
There's a wheel slider down underneath. That's exposure. This is color. I'm going to reset my offset wheel. Lift is shadow. So if I wanted to put a little bit of teal into the shadows, I use the color wheel to put a little teal into the shadows. If I want to put a little orange into the highlights, I go over to gain, put a little orange into the highlights. Now, I've got myself a little teal and orange color grade.
Nice. Okay, so we're looking at those color wheels. It's shadows, midtones, highlights, and then sort of the offset is like the master. That's everything. It's affecting everything all at once.
Exactly. And then you've also got temperature, tint, contrast. Pivot has to deal with contrast. You can set your highlights, your shadows. Color boost, which looks like saturation but isn't saturation, and that's just a whole different conversation.
Well, what about something simple like white balance? A lot of us have cards and we go, I've come in, I just want to quickly white balance my footage so that if it happened to be in an environment that was very color ridden because the bulb happened to be very yellow or something, and you want to go, I want to balance it, get the white balance straight. What would we do? What's the simplest way to white balance the footage? Okay,
simplest way to white balance footage. Let's go ahead and we'll start with a fresh grade. And the first thing that I'm going to want to do is adjust exposure. So let's just do that real quick. I'm not even going to go through my methods. I'm just going to do it. There you go. Bring the shadows down. We're going to adjust. Actually, that's pretty basic contrast curve. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a second node. We are done with the exposure step. Okay. So we're going to right click on our node, add node, and a serial node is just the next node down the chain. Okay, you can add serial or serial before. There's also parallel, layer, and outside. That's for a totally different thing. That's another conversation again. So we'll just do a serial node, okay? And we're gonna white balance. Now there's a couple ways to do white balance. There's the more complicated, more professional way, but quick and dirty. If you come into your color wheels and you select this eyedropper here, you just click on the eyedropper.
Upper left of the color wheel section, yep.
Yep, you select, you just click on the eyedropper and you drag it over something in your image that you think should be white. We're going to zoom in. Whoa, too far.
That's looking good.
Yeah, right. And we're going to select my eyeball because that always produces some interesting results.
For me, that would go full bloodshot.
Right. Click on it, and it'll just adjust your entire image to make whatever is supposed to be white, white.
Nice.
So now,
and for a lot of people, we always try to remind people, like you've seen me doing on my channel, I have a white balance card you can buy really cheap. It's like a true white, non-reflective, or a gray card. You can put it up there and it just shows something white that you hold up like next to your face if you're doing a talking head, and you can click on it in your footage. You hold it up before, and so when you're in your edit, you have something to actually that you know is true white or should be white as a reference point.
Exactly. So yeah, we've broken it into steps. We've done our exposure. We can label the nodes so we don't get lost. So we'll just call this EXP for exposure. Okay. We will label this one WB for white balance, or Warner Brothers, whichever you prefer. And then from there, again, we're doing quick and dirty. We're not going with necessarily industry standard best practices here. We can add one more node. For the shortcut for serial node is Alt S. And here we'll do what we did before, just a quick teal in the shadows, orange in the highlights. And now we've got, we'll just call this look, because that's our look. And now in 3 nodes, we've adjusted exposure, fixed our white balance, and created a look.
Cool. So we kind of got, that's like, there's your color grading to a certain degree right there.
Yep.
Nice. I love it. I think that, man, it's some of this I think is going to be confusing to people as they get into it, because with anything that's a higher functioning piece of software, it's going to be tricky. It is going to be a learning curve. Jay, I think you've done a great job today at really making it easy for people to come in, download the software, install it, start bringing in footage, and follow along and go, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try cutting. I'm going to do it and follow along here to be able to actually start using the software and say, I know how to at least get in, cut things up, add a few transitions, a little color, fix my audio, and export it. So I can't even thank you enough for how helpful this has been today. Can you do me a favor and make sure that you send me the names of the channels that you think are on YouTube of guys that have been helping you that you think have been really useful for other portions of learning DaVinci Resolve? Because
100%.
I've already added your link to Jay's channel. If you're interested, Jay on his channel shows all kinds of crazy stuff you can do in DaVinci and in general, just in terms of videography and actually editing. He's just got a great channel that just talks about making content. So definitely check out his channel. I've got that linked in the description. I will add any of Jay's recommendations there too, so that you can hopefully use this as a resource to come back to, and anyone who is interested in learning the software and getting started will have at least a good jumping off point to have some references of what to do and where to look for some other people who also can help you down that path.
Yes, I will definitely send those to you. There's a lot of DaVinci Resolve. You know what? There's also a Discord. There's a Discord with a whole bunch of us DaVinci Resolve YouTubers just in there helping people out and giving advice and stuff. So I'll send that link to you too.
Awesome. Well, listen, as we, I can say honestly, you've never looked better. But as we end this,
where's my ellipse mask so you can at least.
You got to get that circled down.
Yeah.
Jay, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and helping so many creators out there the way you did today. And for everybody who's watching, I will absolutely go back in the next 24, 48 hours and I will chapter this and I will break it up so you can find the portions and be able to go, I just want to learn about that section and get it so it's digestible. And you can download the software. I'll make sure I put links to where to download the free version of DaVinci Resolve, and hopefully this will be helpful for people who are looking for something to move on to next and maybe consider it as an option. So Jay, again, thank you so much, my friend. I can't thank you enough.
No problem. Sorry my camera died, but thanks for having me on.
That's all right. We'll just make it all about me. It's all about me.
Yeah.
He's just like my guardian angel. He's the voice in the background. So everybody, I hope you guys have learned something here today. I hope you all have a fantastic holiday into the new year's, and we'll be talking more about these kind of different options as we move forward on the channel. And don't be surprised if you see Jay back on here, but don't be afraid to go to Jay's channel and ask him questions, because he's one of those guys like me that likes to actually answer the comments section. So wishing you the best, and we'll talk to you all again soon.